Hey guys, SoCal Val here. You are listening to the Hitting the Turnbuckle podcast.
Welcome, everybody, back to the Hitting the Turnbuckle podcast. I am your host, Andy Burrows, and we have an amazing show today. As you can see, though, I'm joined by my illustrious co-hosts, Mr. Adam Cousins and Dave Robinson. Good evening, lads. It's a late one today, boys. How are we?
Good evening.
Hello, mate. All good.
Good. Adam, you are the king of the intros, mate. You're going to probably have to outdo yourself here, my friend, because this is someone that we've wanted to talk to for a long time, and he's one of our own, so we can't get this wrong. Adam, who have we got joining us today, my friend?
We use the term British wrestling royalty, don't we? Sometimes
We do.
And tonight for us, it is exactly that. We're joined by a man who's won titles everywhere he's gone. Interestingly enough, I do have to ask him a favour. On Saturday, when you're wrestling at Shropshire Wrestling, can you not injure Charles Crowley? Because he's actually coming to our show the next night. But it is Nick Aldis, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Nick.
Pleasure to be here, lads. Thank you for putting no pressure on me now.
Yeah, Nick, whatever you do, don't injure him on Sunday. I think Adam will have a heart attack.
I'll bring my gear.
I'm in our dining room, and there's probably more wood in this room than anywhere else in the house. So I'm knocking on wood now. I haven't injured anybody in a long. I don't think I've ever injured anybody really, apart from a bit of an unfortunate mishap once with a concussion. But we both got hurt, so it wasn't that I injured someone. But I would hope that I keep that trend going on
Just
Saturday.
Don't beat him up too much.
I'm looking forward to working with him.
It'll be good. Nick, I was like we say, thanks so much for joining us, my friend. Yeah, you are to us British wrestling royalty, and just the fact that we get to spend some time with you tonight is amazing. We've just come off Slammiversary. We said it on at the weekend, and I know we've reviewed the show since then. It's probably my favorite show so far this year. It's definitely, I mean, we've attended Money in the Bank, we've gone to Rev Pro. Slammiversary was incredible this past weekend. Just tell us what it was like for you being back in Impact all the time on this podcast. We're so glad that Impact is still going and still around.
Yeah, it's been very rewarding. I've been asked this a few times, and I think that it's a funny thing because people will say, "Oh, he's back at Impact Wrestling, right?" And obviously, look, a big part of my story is TNA, which then became Impact Wrestling, and but for all intents and purposes, with the exception of a sort of handful of staff, it's sort of really essentially a different company. And so it's funny for those of us like Alex Shelley and like Frankie Kazarian and now EY, like those of us who were sort of there for TNA, and all those guys I just mentioned were there long before I was there even. So it's sort of interesting because the cultures are very different, and I've had such a blast doing this run with Impact. I sort of liken it to sort of how the territory days used to be, where it was always laid out this way, like, hey, I don't think I want to, I've just been under contract for 4 years. I didn't want to just immediately sort of jump into another long-term agreement, and it worked out well in that regard because it was that way you eliminate any sort of miscommunication and any sort of a huge part of wrestling, and I think a lot of the reasons why relationships break down in wrestling, it almost always comes down to communication, and invariably it becomes the wrestler says, "You promised me this," and the promoter says, "Well, I changed, plans change, things change, and so there's always this inevitable sort of lack of communication, which it leads to potential sort of conflict and acrimony. And in this example, it was so easy because it was kind of like, hey, you know, how about you come in and, you know, we've got this idea for you to main event Slammiversary. I appreciate that. That's a big honor. Thank you very much. You know, let's do it. You know, so now it's like, no, there's no time wasting. It's not going, oh, where is this going? What about this? What about that? It's like, here's the business. Here's what we're doing. You know, and now we can just focus fully on executing, which, you know, I wish there were more opportunities for guys to work like that in wrestling, because I've said this before, a lot of young guys, and look, I understand, you know, and because I signed my first contract at 21, you know, so, you know, and I would talk to a lot of guys, especially Brits, who, you know, would ask me, how do I get signed? How do I get a contract? And it's different for Brits because you need a contract to get a visa. You know, you need paper to get to the US and all that kind of thing. So I understand that, you know, there's nuance to all of this. But to a lot of young lads, I sort of tell them, like, don't be in a rush to sign a contract, because unless that contract is for a really healthy amount of money, all you're essentially doing is sort of handing over control of your destiny to somebody else. You know, like you're saying, okay, I'm going to show up and I have to do whatever you tell me, you know, whether that's beneficial or detrimental to you know, to my value going forward. And not to say that anyone ever has the intention of devaluing someone, you know, that's not what I'm saying. But I think that often, you know, there are times where signing a 3-year agreement, you know, for a prospect may end up actually sort of slowing your progress down a bit, because, like in my case, I was very fortunate with my first TNA run, simply because Dixie was hell bent on me succeeding, you know, and that's the truth, right? And that's why I have, you know, I do have a very sort of ambiguous, you know, opinion when it comes to Dixie, because I can appreciate and I can acknowledge that, you know, she made mistakes like everybody has, and I agree with a lot of the, you know, valid criticisms of her. Although, you know, I do think that a lot of them are mean-spirited, without any real reason. But from a personal standpoint, you know, I owe so much to her, because she, you know, before anybody else, before Jeff Jarrett, before, you know, obviously Billy, you know, before any of these people, it was like she was hell bent on me succeeding. And as a result of that, you know, I got a contract. But what also happened was I was sort of thrown in at the deep end, and then, you know, before they had a chance to, you know, before they went, oh, okay, this kid's drowning, let's just pull him out of the pool. No, they just said, no, just keep going. Like, you keep swimming, right? Like, you're going to work with Beer Money on the house shows. We're going to team you with Doug. You know, then now you're going to work with the Dudleys, and now you're going to do this, now you're going to do that, right? It's like, and I know, and I'll say this point too, and I know I'm sort of jumping all over the place here, but there's something else that sort of bothers me a little bit, and I'm going to be the old man yelling at clouds now, but you know, I was having this conversation with a couple of veterans the other day at Slammiversary, actually, where I was like, you know how many times in the early days of TNA I would have just a rotten match, you know, just absolutely stink up the place on a house show, and I come back and like Billy Gunn, Bubba, you know, or I don't know, Al Snow, you know, anyone would be like, that was shit. You know, like Billy Gunn especially, you know, would be like, that was the drizzling shit. Like, you need to like get better at this, right? Like, not in a mean-spirited way, as in like, you know, you need to know this. And he was right. And it's like, when I sort of wonder, like, is that happening anymore? You know, is anybody coming back when they had a shit match and being told that was shit? Like because I don't see it. And I think that quality control is something that should be done in private in pro wrestling. And I think that there are a lot of people who are way too sensitive to be in this business, who at the first sign of any sort of criticism, they run to Twitter to sort of get everybody on their side and, gaslight the other person. Like, look what these people are being mean to me, or they label it as like a generational difference, or they label it as a sort of, they haven't evolved, and all this sort of thing. And I just think back and I go like, no, I absolutely needed that. But anyway, so yeah, I took a long way around to answer that. But yeah, no, I've had a great time being with Impact, and like I said, it's been a joy to be part of Alex Shelley's ascendancy, because and we wove it into the story, obviously, but he was one of the guys who was like, hey, we get together and train and practice, like, at TV, you should come, or we'll show you some stuff. AJ did that with me. Joe did that with me. But Patrick was the one who really, went out of his way to be like, oh, you're good at this. Why don't you try that? Hey, if that thing isn't your thing, then just stay away from it. Here's how you do this, here's how you do that. And we were talking about it the other day, because we were talking about some of the guys on the roster who we could identify as like, having a lot of potential impact. And he's still doing that. He's still going. He's holding training sessions with all of the young up and coming talent at 1 o'clock in the afternoon at TVs and stuff, and like, he's a world champion. Like, and it's an admirable thing. So I was honored to do the honors for him, because he deserved it, and I was really glad that we got to tell that story.
Nick, just one question before I throw to Adam and Dave. You mentioned it there, obviously, about people coming back through the curtain, and do they get told they have a bad match? I've seen some interviews with wrestlers. I've grown up, like myself and Adam and Dave, been fans since like 1985, and every documentary you can name it, I've watched it. Do you think that is it a case of now the youngsters, would they come to you and say, are there these days gone of, oh, do you mind watching my match? Do you mind critiquing this for me? I mean, are them days kind of gone now? Because I think it's the way social media is now. They just post a match on there, like you say, the world and his wife can suddenly be a wrestling critic, but are them things kind of coming out of wrestling where they'll come to you and go, Nick, would you mind taking a look at my match, and could you like help me here? Is that kind of thing going out of the business now?
No, it's not. It's although you can usually tell the difference between when someone is genuinely asking or whether they're doing it for a sort of performative reason.
Yeah.
Just sort of, I need to be seen asking for advice, so I'm asking for advice, kind of thing. But the funny thing is that it's not even necessarily a case of like coming back through the curtain and immediately someone, because that's oftentimes, that's probably, I always think that's actually, a lot of the time, that's the worst possible time to be giving someone the feedback that they need, because their
emotions are running high,
adrenaline, right? Emotions, and it's hard when you've just sort of presented this, this piece of work, right? Like, imagine if, you just finished painting a picture, and it took you 3 hours, at the final, brush stroke, someone comes and goes, oh, I don't like this, I don't like that. It's hard to take it at that exact moment. Whereas, maybe a day later, you will get to walk away from it for a little bit. Now you look at it and then you see it, and then the other person says, I feel like it could have more this and more that. Yeah, you're right. Like, so I definitely think, like, Lance Storm as an example does something which I think is really great, which is he will email the guys when it airs on TV, like, and then we'll say, here are my notes, And so now you can watch it, or you've already watched it, and now you can line it up with with the feedback, because you need to see what the audience sees, and you need to see what he is seeing, right? Obviously, you can't, when you're just coming back through the curtain, you can't always see that, right? Like, because in your mind, look, self-awareness is without question the most valuable quality you have to survive in pro wrestling. So you get to a point where, like, if you're honest with yourself and you have good self-awareness, you come back and you already know which parts could have been better, I can't think of any example off the top of my head of a wrestler who I admire, who has succeeded and or has a significant body of work, who isn't their own worst critic, right? Like, so it's really about teaching this sort of those personal qualities, and understanding that it needs to be seen more as a sort of peer review, than necessarily like, I'm a veteran and I'm going to criticize you because you're young, that kind of thing. It's more like a lot of it obviously just comes in the delivery, but you can tell which guys like really want to get better, and I used to sort of take it as a bit of a backhanded compliment, but there was a period of time when I sort of started ascending to world title picture status in TNA in my first run. I would get a lot of people that would say, like, man, you might be the most improved wrestler I've ever seen, right? Which is sort of a backhanded compliment, because it's like, yeah, improved from being pretty shit.
Thanks for that.
Thanks, Billy Gunn.
Yeah, it's like at football when you get most improved player.
Yeah. But but here's the thing, right? I love Billy Gunn, and I'm saying him as an example because I'd come back and I looked up to Billy, so when I come back and he's like, God, that was the shit, why don't you just burn your fucking boots, like you've done too, unless you go out there and better match, you fucking straighten your ass up, oh, okay. Obviously at the time it stings, but but that he's not doing it to hurt your feelings. He's doing it because he wants you to get better. Cool. Right? And it's like, I guess for me, and I also came up on the holiday camp, and that crew as well. It was very much a sort of self-policing culture too, because they're like, this is our livelihood. So if you have to come up to this standard of work, otherwise you can't be here, because we need these people to come back every time, and if you don't give them a good enough quality of performance, they're not going to keep coming back. So straighten up or get the fuck out. And like, yeah, that's how it works. Like, everybody gets a trophy has no place in pro wrestling. All right, so it's like, this is a 100% subjective medium, meaning like there is really no such thing as like the best wrestler. There's only, is somebody achieving conversion or not? Meaning, are they contributing in a positive way to the card? Are they helping, add to the brand value? Are they helping to sell tickets, sell merchandise, sell pay-per-view? Or are they delivering the necessary part of the card on that night to help sort of prop up the rest of the show? Whatever your function is, are you achieving that? And if the answer is yes, then fine. But it's a completely subjective medium, and it shouldn't. Personal merits, while important, are not essential, right? Like, it's about delivering.
Yeah, no, definitely. Go on, Ads, mate.
Nick, we're living in a reign of Roman Reigns in a minute, who's having this massive title run. But before he had the title for so long, you had a certain pounds of gold for over 1,000 days. And I've quite gotten into NWA. We've got a colleague of ours, Fiona Lochran, who actually knows you quite well from England, Scotland. Fiona, she's a big NWA fan.
Oh, he said England. Oh my God, she's going to kill him.
Oh, well, yeah. So we're going to talk about that a minute. So obviously, you beat Tim Storm. You lost to Cody at All In. You won it back 2 out of 3 falls. And then you went on this incredible reign. Is these sort of these longish title reigns, are they needed in wrestling now? Because for me, I've grown up, as Andy mentioned, in the 80s and 90s, where title reigns meant something. And it was like, you knew if you had the IC title in the 90s, you were going up. That was your test to go to the world, but you'd have it for a certain amount of time. You had the NWA title for over 1,000 days. Do you think that adds that prestige? So when it is lost, it's like an oh my God moment kind of thing.
For the most part, yes.
Yeah.
I do think that. Look, I think you have to be very careful about making sort of declarative statements. Again, like I just said, it's a subjective medium, right? Like, I don't think anybody would look back at the business that was being done during the Attitude Era and be like, oh, it would have been so much better if we had just had one champion who'd been the champion for the whole time, right? Like everything it all depends on all the other factors, environmental factors. But certainly in my case, I think it was more of a necessity, because I basically had sort of become sort of synonymous with it. And then as a result, and I'm trying to say this in a way that doesn't sound, completely sort of self-congratulatory, but I had gotten to a point where we were able to elevate guys simply by having a title match.
Yeah.
Right. So then you can sort of build, you can sort of establish a few people. And I was always, of the opinion that the right person in the right circumstances, in the right moment, and all that will reveal itself. Let's not get into making it like, we're not sort of who needs to be the next champion, which is sort of, I think, what you get now, because look, everyone wants to be fantasy booker. And, a lot of those fans, while they claim to sort of have all these sort of different takes, for their sort of professed love of wrestling, it's also their love of power. A lot of the time they just want the power to go, look, I did that, right? Like we did that. We said that this guy should, because you see that sometimes where like someone who they sort of really rally behind, and then they actually go with them, and then they kind of drop off, right? Because that group of fans now, they've lost interest now, because they've achieved what they wanted, which was to have the power to affect an action, a change, right? So I think with Roman, you're just witnessing a very obviously unique and sort of top guy, right? Like there are a number of valid challenges, but does anyone have the aura that he has right now? I would say no. And you don't mess with that, because that is so hard to come by, and I think that, like I said, seeing what's happened with his run, I suppose in a way it makes me happy, because it sort of validates that I was on, my opinion, which was, I think because what, my belief on it prior to, with the NWA title was, look, there's all these different shows, There's all these different styles of stuff happening 100 miles an hour. You know, there's all these belts. Let's go completely the other direction and go one belt, you know, one champion, one main event. Like, you know, let's focus on making that important, and everything else will fall into place. That was my belief. And so to see that belief, you know, utilized and done, you know, by the number one company. No, it's more than the number one company. It's like it's the all-time, you know, juggernaut of juggernauts, right? Like it's the show. You know, to see them adopt that philosophy and for it to work so well, it's cool to me, because I'm like, I always believed that would work, and they're proving it, you know.
Yeah.
And you know, he's the man, and everybody is benefiting.
Nick,
you know,
sorry, Nick.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, like you mentioned, Dixie kind of really wanting you to have that run in your TNA Impact run. But I know you don't want to pat yourself on the back too much and say anything that might come across as arrogant in any way. But I think you kind of made that situation with NWA. It was the only choice. You made it. You were the world champion. It was undeniable the way you looked, the way you carried yourself, the matches you were having. So kind of that long run was kind of, you forced the issue, I suppose, in my view.
That's kind of you to say, and I you know, like I said, I tend to agree at the risk of sounding too full of myself. But yeah, I mean, that was my intent, right? Like,
yeah,
when they called me about it, and I sort of went, well, you know, the truth is, it's like, well, I haven't got anything else going on, you know. And in my mind, I thought, at least this is the opportunity for me to present myself exactly how I want to present myself, not sort of kind of, but oh, they want this and I want that, we'll sort of meet in the middle. No, I get the chance to present all of it exactly how I want to present it, you know. And yes, you know, undeniable is a good descriptor. And you know, that was Cody's thing, right? From undesirable to undeniable.
Yeah.
You know, and which is why doing business with him All In was so easy too, because I didn't have any ego about it. I went, this is the moment, you know, like, because I can point at it and go, I won the title, I think it was December of 2017, you know, you know, and then to fast forward to September 1st of 2018.
Yeah.
You know, that's a pretty significant jump in sort of, you know, in the significance of world title matches, right? Like, you know, to go for a year before that, to think was anybody, and nobody was even talking about the NWA, never mind the NWA title,
yeah,
you know, on September the 1st, 2017. But on September the 1st, 2018, it was, you know, the eyes and ears of the business were on that match. And I can tell you that because I got text messages from top guys at WWE. You know, I got messages from Hall of Famers, like who's who of the industry reached out to me on that night, you know. And so I can only imagine, you know, and I can only imagine what Cody got, you know, because it was like, what you guys just did was special, right? Like, and that's the purpose of being a world champion. That's kind of the purpose of being the perennial champion, right? Like I tried to model my NWA title run predominantly after four guys: Flair, Bockwinkel, Harley Race, and Triple H. They were like the four guys, and Bret, but Bret was, you know, a babyface for most of his run, so it wasn't quite the same. Although, having said that, on a lot of the, when I was doing the traveling champion shtick and I was doing like independent shows, and I defended that belt on 4 different continents, I was more of a sort of babyface. So that's where I would sort of borrow more from Brett, because Brett's my hero. And like Brett would be, so that would be where I would borrow a lot from Brett, as far as like being the aggressor, being the superior wrestler, but also still being humble, and making sure that I sort of I press the issue in the ring, but I'm not being mean spirited, and I'm not taking shortcuts. I'm not cheating necessarily. It's more just like I'm crafty. I'm more, and so then by the time you get to the end, my job was, I was talking to Shelley about this the other day. I made it a personal challenge to myself to go, okay, I'm in, Columbia, South Carolina, whatever, right? Like an independent show against a guy who is a good wrestler, not particularly well-known name. The challenge that I've set to myself is, can I, in the course of this 20-minute, 25-minute match, can I get these people in this building on this night to believe that there is just a chance, a sliver of a chance that he might win the title? Like that was the challenge. If I can get them to just for a second think, oh wait, are they gonna do that? That then I'd achieved what I set out to achieve. And so then by the end of the match, when I beat him with my finish, and I shook his hand in the ring and raised his hand, everyone, this guy's getting a standing ovation. Like that was my hope. I pulled it off more times than I didn't, but even if I didn't pull it off, it was still a satisfactory night. But that was the intent. Like, can I get these people on this night to give this kid a standing O?
Yeah, we managed it in most cases. Definitely so. Obviously, you said 4 continents. There was loads. I mean, we had Yestin Reese on a couple of months ago. Myself and Dave spoke to him. You wrestled him for the title. Just before I hand over to Dave to talk a bit more about the British wrestling side, do you have a favourite match out of that big run that you did with anyone in particular? I know you had Ricky Jr. and you had a lot of others, but is there a particular favourite of yours that stands out?
I did love the match with Junior,
yeah.
Just because of the sort of personal significance, having started with the Knights and everything. So to sort of be in that position to sort of help, and look, to see him now, he's one of the top independent names in the country. So, I'm proud to have played a little part in that. So it was cool, being the first NWA champion to defend the title in China. I wrestled Colt Cabana, and it was, a weird, it was a weird experience just because, the crowd, it was really hard to know what they were gonna. I think we sort of went expecting a crowd with sort of Japanese sensibilities, and they really had more of a. They did not. They had their own sensibilities. The Chinese, totally different, and that was perhaps a little naive on our part to sort of. But we were also. It was also it was an Inoki show, so I think it was just more of a sort of the culture of the show in general. But once we started going, we sort of realized that these guys want entertainment. They want they want razzle dazzle. But a great experience. I'm trying to think. I had a match in Belfast, and I can't remember the guy's name, and I feel terrible. I can't remember his name now. Phil something, and he actually ended up retiring not long after because I could be wrong, but I feel like it's because he said something to the effect of, after having that match, I sort of felt like I could sort of put a little bow on my, wrestling, which felt good because, again, it was a sort of, and it was, it was a good house, and again, just, by the end of it, we had them, we had them believing that just maybe, we could be seeing a title switch, and then, the match with Marty at Crockett Cup, I think probably my best match, one of my best I've ever had, and I'd say the 2 out of 3 falls with Cody. Everybody thinks about All In, and obviously that's understandable. But I always felt like the return bout 6 weeks later, in Nashville, 2 out of 3 falls. We put in a lot of time. I think we went about 45 minutes. And I felt a lot of satisfaction on that one because that was another sellout, and we set a box office record for the Nashville Fairgrounds. And it was only 6 weeks after All In, So I think a lot of people that came to the Nashville show were people who, couldn't come to All In. And the thing that, and then because of our match, they still went, I don't want to miss that one because at least I'll get to see that, and that's again a testament to the Cody and I for a period of time there, we had something really special. We caught lightning in a bottle, and it's great to see what he's been able to sort of do with that momentum ever since.
Nick, in the build up to that you match it All In, you said that in regards to the NWA, that you had reinvigorated and revitalized a brand that was on life support, and you certainly managed to achieve that. Going into All In, one of the biggest wrestling pay-per-views certainly in modern times, and I'd like to ask you in a minute about your thoughts on All In this year from Wembley. But there was a specific moment in that match that I loved with Cody. And it was the moment where you come off the top and you hit Brandy with the elbow. And it wasn't so much the elbow, it was like the story, the look on your face. That moment was just fantastic. And I'd love to see more stuff like that in wrestling. Who kind of came up with that, and how was it working with Cody? And will there ever be a rubber match?
Look, working with Cody is a joy.
Yeah.
Because he and I are just so on the same page in terms of our philosophy of, let's do Rocky,
Yeah.
like that's, I always sort of felt like no one tread carefully in how I say this, because I don't want to upset anyone or make it feel like I'm sort of trying to, antagonize anyone, but I always felt like All In was supposed to be this sort of celebration of a certain type of wrestling. And then we kind of spoiled that a little bit because we ended up sort of stealing the thunder a little bit with this very traditional kind of built up to, NWA title match. But having said that, that's too generalized, because of what All In was really supposed to represent was that it was all of the best. It was pretty much supposed to be all the best guys who aren't in WWE, at that time. And it's the best, here's the variety, right? Like if you like crazy, tons of spots, blah, 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 here's this match. If you like, a bit of gaga and a bit of ha-ha, here's this match. And then it was like me and Cody. If you like, the straight up traditional build, the serious like sports kind of world title match, all on the line, Rocky, then here's that match. And, just turned out that that's the one that, really sort of seemed to capture everybody on that night. The spot with Brandy, I can almost tell you for certain was Cody's idea. I don't really remember how it was in, but I would never have suggested like, hey, why don't you use Brandy as a shield? So I'm sure it was, something that Cody had suggested. And, props to, fair play to Brandy, he had the balls to sort of do that, because obviously I did my best to take care of her, but, it still takes a lot of courage to go and give your back to someone like that. Right. Like, and, I'd be remiss to guess her weight, but I'd say like probably 110, 120 pound woman, and she's, and so it's like a 250 pound guy jumping off the top, landing with his elbow inside on her back. It's like, that it takes a lot of guts, and it took a lot of trust in her, as far as like her to trust me, to do it. Got a huge reaction. Cody's never shy on smoke and mirrors stuff in wrestling, right? Like the thing I admire one of the things I admire greatly about Cody is that he understands that, like, once you've gotten, once they're there in the matches, like, now is the time to do all that stuff. Like, now's the time to give them, all the drama, all the Shakespeare, right? Like, he and I share, I mean, a lot of opinions and a lot of philosophies, but I'd say probably the one that we share the most strongly is that we both believe that wrestling is built around moments, not matches.
Yeah.
And it was a testament to, in the stuff we did, because, I don't know if people really think of that match and go, oh yeah, I love that move you did, or those, that spot you did. We did some great moves and some great spots, but it was more about, like, what a moment.
Yeah.
The moment, to me, the two moments were the beginning, when the whole place is on their feet for the bell, right? The sort of the unscripted, unintended sort of long, extended kind of ovation, which I always sort of took as I felt like, in a weird way, it was sort of, I feel like everybody sort of knew what the outcome was likely to be. Although we did enough to just plant enough seed of doubt, which is why I think the match worked. But deep down, I think people sort of knew, like, are they going to give us what we want here, right? Like, we want to see that moment. We want to see the 1, 2, 3 for Cody. So I always sort of felt like that extended ovation at the beginning was a little bit for me, like a little bit, that's sort of like, hey, well done both of you for sort of creating this. Like, I always sort of took it as that, and I was grateful to that Chicago crowd for that.
Yeah, most definitely. Nick, we've been attending a lot more UK shows since we've come out of COVID, and we can go back to watching shows. We say it all the time on here. Myself and Adam went to Rev Pro a couple of weeks ago. I know that Dave's coming to see you wrestle this weekend. It must be so good for you to see the UK scene thriving now more than it seems to have ever been. We're hosting our event this weekend down at Ignite Wrestling in Boreham Wood. It must be so good for you. Obviously, like, you've gone to wrestle for some of the biggest companies in the world. But when it all comes back to you, like you said at the start, you were doing the fair, like the fair scene and stuff like that. It must be so good for you to see how big the UK wrestling scene has gone. It must give you an enormous sense of pride as well.
Oh, absolutely. I think because there's so many talented guys, and unfortunately, they're not all going to get to come to the States or to go to Japan, right? It's just, and it's not, and look, I'm not going to sit here and go, it's purely because of talent, like, there's a lot of luck involved, and timing and circumstance. And there are a lot of guys who are every bit as talented as, any of us who have been able to enjoy success in America or Japan. And they just were unfortunate with timing. Timing's a lot in this business. So it's not only is it, not only do I take a lot of, joy in seeing the scene doing as well as it does, but it's also that, I also hope that those guys understand how important they are, and how they can make it as big as they want it to be, right? If I've proven anything, it's that you can make something out of nothing. if you have enough chutzpah, right? Like, if you have enough kind of self-confidence and belief in your vision and conviction in, like, it's the most, this is what I say more than any other thing when I'm talking to younger guys or seminars, whatever. Wrestling begins and ends with this lesson: if you believe it, they believe it.
Yeah.
Right. And until, I don't care how talented you are. I don't care if you do one move or 100 moves. I don't care if you look like Lex Luger. I don't care if you look like, Grado. It's like, if you, I love Grado.
I just love that reference.
Right, but I'm making if you bear with me, I'm making a point here because Grado was super over.
Yeah,
really
right.
over.
Right, and he had his moment at the Glasgow Arena.
Yeah,
Working with Drew. I mean, like, that was special, and I don't think enough people realize just how difficult that was to pull off, right? For him and ICW and all that. And that's what I'm saying is, it's like, if you don't think that you can sell out an arena, you can't.
Yeah.
But like ICW and Grado and other places, it's like they didn't have limiting beliefs of like, well, we're just this. Like, when they got to a point, they went, I'm sure they had that conversation. I'm sure Dallas and those guys went, are we going to do this? Fuck it. Let's do it.
Yeah.
We're going to run a fucking arena, and like, thank God for people like that.
Yeah,
definitely.
Right. The same way that the Bucks and Cody went, hell yeah, we can sell out an arena. Watch. And how fortunate am I that Cody decided, who I'm going to work with? I'm going to work with Nick Aldis.
Yeah.
What was that call like when they reached out to you? How did that come about?
It was sort of texting first, and a little bit of flirting and a bit of.
What we did at the weekend.
Yeah, a bit of sliding into my DMs.
Feel like we did.
Yeah, we've been doing that for you for months, Nick.
Yeah. And that's that's sort of how Cody operates. Is it sort of keeps the cards a bit close to the vest at first, and then it's sort of for this and that, And again, I think one of the reasons why I think Cody and I worked so well together was because I could pick up on his non-verbal communication, and then I would just dismantle all the red tape and go, "Are you asking me to do this? Is this what we're doing? Yes. All right. Cool. Let's do business." Because look, I understand that I'm an opinionated guy, and I have my detractors, and I have my critics, and some of them are valid, and some of them, whatever. But I think if you ask anyone who knows me in the business, truly knows me, that they will tell you, whether you don't have to like me personally, but I'm business, right? Like, if it's the right thing to do for business, like, I'll do it.
Yeah.
I am not a mark. Like, I'm about business, and I've always done business, and that, to me, that's what I learned more than anything from Flair, from Harley, from Triple H, from Bockwinkel, guys like that. Like, they knew their role. I'm going to be the antagonist, and the antagonist in this situation, when the time is right, the antagonist has to get beat, and when he gets beat, it is a big deal. But when he gets beat, he gets beat. It's not, 1-2, I almost didn't lose. Like, that was, Scott Hall taught me that. He was like, when you're a heel, like, and you're a champion, it's like when you put someone over, like, you put them over. You don't need an out.
Yeah, you don't half-assed put them over. You really put them over.
And that's where I got that, because I heard Scott say that once. Like, he's like, I hated the 1-2, I almost didn't lose. And it's like, yeah, that's so stupid when you think about it. But I sat under the learning tree of Kevin Nash and Scott when I had a chance, and Joe and Kurt and Stinger, and it's I was very blessed, but like, that's informed my philosophy on the business more than anything.
Wow.
Nick, in regards to doing business. We spoke to Matt Cardona recently, and obviously Cody did the same. When he went back to WWE, he was Cody Rhodes. He was the American Nightmare. He kind of earned that right to go there, to go back and be that version of himself. Matt Cardona told us that if he went back to the WWE, he would be Matt Cardona. Zack Ryder's dead. How important is it for you, to whatever future future options you've got, possibilities, things that come along, how important is it to be Nick Aldis? And because we certainly feel like you've earned the right to do that, you kind of will have yourself. So how important is that to you?
I completely understand where Matt's coming from, and I agree with him. He is Matt Cardona, and what a testament to that, considering that how long he was part of the WWE. I feel like it would be very difficult for me at this point to to have another persona, but it's not. Look, again, it's like anything, right? Like, nothing is impossible, and I want to avoid sort of making any sort of statement that I would then have to make a retraction on, right? Or because you just don't know what's around the corner. And the lay of the land now could be completely different to 6 months from now or a year from now. There's just, in this business, you have to be willing to accept the things that you cannot change and the things that are out of your control, and you have to be you have to do as much as you can with what you can control. And I know that that's a sort of a non-answer, but it's sort of it sort of reflects where I'm at, because I don't know what's around the corner for me, but you have to just approach it with a sort of calm belief in your own ability. And look, the opportunities that could be lying ahead for me could be something completely different to what I was expecting.
Yeah.
But again, it's like I have to be willing to sort of to commit to it 100% and put because I've put in my 10,000 hours in this business, right? Yeah. So
paid your dues.
How that manifests itself, some of that is out of my control, but what's in my control is being a professional and contributing as best I can.
Yeah, most definitely. Well, Nick, we've absolutely loved having you on our show, mate. It's and whatever is round the corner, whatever the future holds, we're very proud of you over here in the United Kingdom. I know you come back as much as you can. I know you're wrestling over here this weekend. Just know that we're extremely proud of what you've done. You fly the flag for our country abroad. Every time we talk, I get it all the time from my I've got a lot of friends Parker, who hosts this show with us. We talk about the English guys that have made an impact in wrestling. Your name comes up all the time from us, and we truly are humbled that you've taken an hour out of your time. I know you've got a big old storm going on over there at the minute, mate. So the fact that you've taken an hour out of our time, we've had an all English podcast as well, Nick. So whatever's round the corner, I know from myself, Dave, and Adam, mate, we wish you nothing but success, my friend. We really mean that.
Well, I appreciate that, and I thank you guys very much. And which one of you is coming to Telford on the weekend?
Yeah, I'll be there, man. I'm in the Midlands, so I'm not far.
All right, good deal. I'll see you there.
Yeah, I'll come and say hi. Thanks, Nick.
No worries, Nick. Thanks so much, Nick. We really appreciate your time. Thank you, buddy.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, mate. Ladies and gentlemen, wow, what a great episode of the Hitting the Turnbuckle podcast. Dave, make sure he doesn't injure anyone on Sunday. He said he's not
Especially Saturday.
No, yeah,
do a running if you have to, Dave. Don't worry about your back. Do a running.
I'll see if they'll make me special enforcer.
We need Crowley in top notch, ready for Sunday.
Yeah, Sunday is buckle up, everyone. This Sunday is our event, Ignite Wrestling Pro. Tickets have sold out. You can't get any more tickets. just keep an eye on all our socials. We'll be posting everything over the weekend. We've got a lot more coming up this week. We've got Raw reviews. We've got SmackDown. We've got
Chris
Ignite.
Harris.
Yeah, we've got Chris Harris. We've got the Ignite guys on. We're promoting Buckle Up. But as always, find us on social media. That has blown up in the last week, by the way. We're so grateful for everyone that's hit follow, subscribe on YouTube. We really, really do. It does mean a lot to us. But at HTT Buckle on Twitter, you can find us on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. Till next time, everybody, this has been a great episode of the Hitting the Turnbuckle podcast. I've been your host, Andy Burrows, with my amazing friends and co-hosts, Mr. Dave Robinson and Adam Cousins. Till next time, everybody, buckle down. Stay safe.